So this video is called How Greed Ruined Gaming. I don't watch these ahead of time, so let's see what happens.
Recently, Ubisoft dropped the world's first quadruple A game called Skull and Bones, and in true Ubisoft fashion, it kinda sucked.
You will see that Skull and Bones is a fully fledged game, he said. It's a very big game, and we feel that people will really see how vast and complete that game is. It's a really full quadruple A game that will deliver in the long run.
Guys, we promise that not only is this game real, but it's complete. And we did finish it. People are
the whole backlash for what's been going on with Ubisoft lately has been crazy to see. It does feel like Ubi is going to have a difficult year. I've seen the controversy surrounding Star Wars. I've seen the controversy surrounding AC Origins. I think both of those games are still going to sell very well. I think they're going to sell just absolutely fine, even with the controversy, because like most people don't follow Twitter.
Really going to see that we did finish the game, and that's how good it is. It's not a little secret that big studio...
We finished the game. Good job, Ubisoft. You finished making the game for 10 years.
Those are dropping big stinky poop out of their butts for $60 or even $70 now. In the past decade, it seems there's been a trend of AAA games releasing in unplayable states. The game is broken, buggy, or even unplayable. Remember when they used to make games...
Do you remember when I basically made the same video and everybody hated me? Like, the thing about the whole Baldur's Gate video that drives me crazy, it's like, what was I advocating for? Complete games at launch. That's it. Like, that's the whole video. And like everybody lost their minds over it. And I'm like, am I really like, do you really think like I'm up to something more than the same thing I've been saying for a decade? Like, come on. The first video on this channel is about not spending money on microtransactions.
Games that worked upon release. Remember when releasing a game meant that it was done? You'd think if a game is ready to be purchased by millions that it should be in working condition, right? Right, guys? I'm gonna need to get out my exercise ball and green screen for this one.
I swear if I get flagged for the music in this thing, like if the whole stream gets demonetized because she played music, I hate it when that happens. Come on, YouTube.
This isn't gonna work very well. AAA studios are so caught up in overworking their employees to launch a non-working game that everyone hates that they spent $70 on, riddled with predatory microtransactions after you've already purchased the full game. And they don't see how much that hurts their franchises in the long run, because their current model is designed for maximum profit. And
yeah, well, she's getting at the heart of like what the real issue is and what the real problem is happening with video game design these days. They're being led by people that only care about money. The people in the trenches, the people making the product, they want to make a good product, but they are caught up in a cycle of having leaders that are like, oh, well, you got to put the microtransactions. You got to like tarnish your game and reputation by adding these predatory practices, because like, that's just what the business calls for now. And like, everybody is just like, yeah, they're right. Like they're caught up in the idea that has to happen, and then these other games come along that don't have any of that. And like, was Baldur's Gate 3 perfect at launch? No, it absolutely was not. But at the same time, they worked to make it better. The No Man's Sky team worked to make it better, and seeing that happen is not the norm. The norm is game comes out, doesn't really work, doesn't get the support it needs. One thing about CDPR is they largely fixed all versions of Cyberpunk, except those base consoles. They're still kind of whatever. Yeah, the problem is profit is at the forefront.
Not maximum enjoyment of consumers. Isn't that counterintuitive? 2K started putting ads in the game after you already bought it.
It's
Hello?
insane.
Oh, this hurts my butt. Cyberpunk released with game-breaking glitches because it wasn't done. But despite not being ready, delaying the release by another year would piss shareholders and investors off, so they decided that this was the best financial decision for them, regardless if the game was done. So they figured, hey,
I think Cyberpunk's an easy target, but they fixed it. So is it okay that they release in that state? No. Did they put in the work to fix it? Yes. And I played the PC version. I still think the PC version was pretty great.
Hey, some profits is better than none, am I right, guys? Hey, who gives a fuck if this type of shit happened?
The problem wasn't every version of Cyberpunk releasing. It was largely the fact that the base console version just wasn't functional. That was more of the problem than a lot of it. Granted, there were a lot of problems on like PS5. The PlayStation like removed it, but most of the really bad stuff was attributed to last gen consoles.
Currently, the game apparently works great now. They've fixed many of the bugs and
She got to
everything,
it.
but it's too little too late in my opinion. You get a reputation for doing that sort of thing. Diablo 4, I couldn't even play couch co-op without glitches that made the game completely unplayable. There was no option to just
That was
play
bad.
offline locally for no reason, so we couldn't even enjoy our Chad Eddie Burback warrior roleplay. I ended up uninstalling the game after several tries over several days, and never played again, which I don't understand. We solved online multiplayer roleplay like 20 years ago.
It's RuneScape, right? I don't know if RuneScape is the best example. Didn't they just get busted like making statistically impossible drops be present in their game?
Greed is such a driving factor for why so many people just hate AAA gaming now. And it's hard to
I agree
deny.
with that.
Ubisoft's CEO spouted how you shouldn't expect to own the games that you buy. As in, gaming will be a service. If you don't own the game you buy,
Yeah,
it can
Caleb.
be taken away, modified, patched. You spent money on a product you don't own, which is just terrible and also explains why Diablo has no option to play offline. When servers go down, then what? When Tony Hawk's Pro
You're right, it
Skater
was
5
MapleStory.
released in 2015, the full game was actually just a modified demo disc that only had the first level on it and then authorization that allowed you to download the rest of the game to your console. They did this because they didn't have time to print the full game disc, and when servers for the game went offline, buying the full game disc now does nothing. It's pathetic. And that's on top of how the game just didn't release in a playable state.
Yeah. Oh god, they're gonna talk about John Riccatello. It's gonna be bad. Jeez. Mike, I'm just gonna ban you. Like, why are you here? Go away. Long story short, like these practices are largely what people are really fed up with. They just want functional products at launch. And like Baldur's Gate 3 was pretty solid until you got to like, what was it, Act 3, which was pretty janky. But that got it got optimized. So there were problems with a lot of the games that were coming out in this time period. And I don't know when this video came out, but she's getting to the point about how profit margins are becoming too much of a focus, and that sucks. It just sort of ruins everything.
Ticello, the former CEO
This guy's
of EA,
terrible.
notoriously greedy company, and who is now the current CEO of Unity, in 2011 proposed a
Nah, he's gone, right? Yeah, he's gone.
model that would charge players real money to refill their ammo in online multiplayer shooters like Battlefield. This scumbag was partly responsible for expanding the popularity of microtransactions in games, and even proposed to charge gamers per bullet fired in games. He said, "When you are 6 hours into playing Battlefield and you run out of ammo in your clip and we ask you for $1 to reload, you're really not that price sensitive in that point in
It's just insane that these people say these things and they're just like, yeah, how can we just monetize the crap out of these games? And profit margin has become too enticing of an incentives. It's really unfortunate. It just sucks. It's just corporate greed has gotten in the way of the people that actually care about making wonderful games.
time.
And just like a recent example is Bungie. Pete Parsons saying we're going to make 45% more revenue than we actually can make. And then they have to fire all these people. Like, it feels awful for the people who are still at the company. It feels awful for the people who had to leave the company, obviously. And like, their whole lives are messed up. And it just gives a whole feeling, an unsettling feeling of the whole industry, because the people leading are talking about charging dollar per bullet. Like, get these people away from video games. It's so problematic. Like, say what you will about Phil Spencer. I think at his heart, he cares about making fun games that people want to play. He allows companies the freedom to sort of experiment. I'm actually really glad that someone like Herman Hulst is up there at the top, because he made games, he plays games, he talks about games. Like, people who are actually invested in what makes games great. I want to see more of those people in leadership positions. So, like, why have I been less hard on Sony lately? Because the leadership change and the tumultuous period we're in right now, it's right now happening. And hopefully we come out on the other side with people that are just, they really, really care about gaming.
He's now the CEO of Unity, a popular game engine for indie devs.
He's gone.
In 2023, John ripped me
This video was made 3 months ago, but I think Riccatello's done. I think he quit Unity.
off. Cello introduced a pricing system that would charge devs each time someone installs their game. That's on top of already paying thousands of dollars a year to use Unity. That's like if Adobe charged me every time I uploaded a video on top of already paying them $50 a month. Not even
Didn't Adobe actually talk about doing that? That's the scary thing. Riccatello is not the only one talking about stuff like that.
Even they are that greedy. That's how greedy this guy is. There's more specifics to the pricing, but this absolutely kills projects.
Don't quote me on the Adobe thing.
Especially ones meant to be free. This dude is a villain to the industry, and I don't know how he became the CEO of another company to ruin. It's just really sad the direction that modern gaming is taking, with not only these greedy CEOs, but going for massive games in terms of scale and file size. There's absolutely no reason that Modern Warfare needs to be over 200 gigabytes. Being
that's
buggy
crazy.
and unplayable, but also uninspired. In the era of every single thing needing to be a remake, this era of large companies prioritizing doing what's safe and pleasing shareholders leads to the same games with less and less.
I kind of want to disagree with some of the points that she's making here. I think there are instances of games trying the same thing. I don't think Sonic Frontiers was an example of Sonic doing the same thing yet again. It was like an open world game. They tried some things that were different. And out of all the companies that receive a lot of criticism, I would say CDPR, for all things considered, and I can't believe I'm saying this, they came out with a really excellent DLC for Cyberpunk. They've moved on to work on other IP. And if the worst thing they ever did was the Cyberpunk thing, which they worked very hard to correct and fix, and hopefully they've learned their lesson about, I hope that's like the one big blemish they have on their record, because everything else they've done has been pretty damn good, if you ask me. So, like, yes, they deserve criticism for it, but at the same time, like, they made The Witcher 3, they made Cyberpunk 2077 and eventually would fix it. Should it be complete at launch? Absolutely. And I hope we never see anything like that from CDPR. But yeah, Edge Runners, like, widely celebrated. So, also, Call of Duty has tried some different things. Call of Duty, I don't think it's that they're doing the same thing. I think it's that they're getting kind of cheap with how they do their campaigns. So, yeah, just my thoughts.
Content being released over and over again at an expensive cost. Sure, a big game staying $60 for several decades technically means games have gotten cheaper over time due to inflation. $60 in 1996 has the same buying power as $120 today. That's like twice the price. But really? Modern Warfare 2? Again? Really? Modern Warfare 3? Again? Do you know how difficult it is searching for things when they just didn't change the name of the new game? This drives me insane. They could have released Modern Warfare 2, or Modern Warfare 3, the remake. Just give me something. Instead of innovation in gameplay and discovering new ways to optimize games through...
Man, N64 era was really good because it was the first time, like, Mario 64 really pushed forward the entire industry. I feel like Mario 64 showed people a new style of designing a game, and, you know, Legend of Zelda at that time also, that people maybe hadn't processed or conceived before, and it gave birth to like a whole new genre and just new ways of storytelling, like Metal Gear on the PlayStation 1. And I think part of the problem is with modern gaming, we are never going to see an innovation like that. The innovations we see right now are like games like Fortnite, where you make one world and then you mess up the world and people live in it forever. I just never think we'll see like the Super Nintendo to N64 swap again. And even from N64 to like the 360 era, PS2, like hitting the PS2, the 360, all that, we're never going to see that jump. There will never be a graphical jump. There's never going to be a piece of tech that comes along again. And that's why, you know, console sales aren't selling as well as they do, because people, like, we're at this point with graphics where I don't know can they really get that much better? They're also like, what's the next step? Photorealism? And most people don't really want photorealism games. Like, you want a little bit of an element of fantasy there. I don't know. I think we're at a really difficult time in terms of technology because we won't see that jump. Sorry to go off on a tangent.
Through creativity and how they manipulated memory to fit on the tiny 64 megabyte cartridges of the N64.
Yeah, you know what's really funny about that, actually? Oftentimes the constraints that we're presented with as creative people or like as developers are presented with, it actually ends up becoming a strength. And they find new ways to make their visions come to life, and it actually ends up becoming charming and interesting. And now that they have everything, and like games aren't optimized, they just like say, oh, we'll just DLSS it with the NVIDIA tech. But there's a craft that's being lost there. And I think that's unfortunate.
Now we have juggernaut games that have no business being over 100 gigabytes, which I just find ridiculous. Like, did you even try optimizing anything?
Yeah.
Why is Fortnite 90 gigabytes? Why? Why is 2K now consistently over 100 gigabytes? That's just a side note that's always pissed me off. But studios are clearly getting sloppy in exchange for time and money. Why?
Yeah, and what I'm, you know, she's making the same point with file size. But it's just like, you had constraints back in the day. You don't have constraints now. And we're seeing just like garbage optimization of these games in terms of performance. Like the frame rate's not stable. The frame timing's not stable. The textures are loading in weird. They're using shader compilation that pulls from the web or some nonsense. Like a lot of the technology that they're utilizing now, it's just like, they don't even try, it feels like. They just say, turn DLSS on and call it a day. And I do miss the days where there was a little bit more of an attempt to do that. You know who does do really cool stuff with optimization, who I love? Insomniac. Insomniac is like at the cusp of tech all the time. They're pushing the boundaries of their engine. They're optimizing, they're pushing and pulling the levers. And it's really, really cool to see. Yeah, and here comes Nintendo running games off a toaster and like trouncing PlayStation and Xbox and PC, who have basically unlimited storage.
I wait a few more years to put out a beautiful, working, exceptional title like Zelda Breath of the Wild, when you could just pump out a Pokemon game every year in worse and worse condition, and make an even more exorbitant amount of cash. Vast open world with nothing interesting to look for or find, just to call it open world. And sure, many games do this well, but maybe focus on a great gameplay experience before just jumping into the open world trend. Because games that release in unplayable conditions mostly end up with a quickly dwindling player base.
Yeah, we're just going to be, we'll be there soon. No worries.
Yeah, you never get a second chance to make a good first impression. That's like a saying that I was taught growing up. And unfortunately, with a lot of these games, they come out, they're not optimized, they don't work, they run poorly, they put out their Twitter statement on a yellow or black background with the text on it saying, we're sorry we screwed up. It's just like, what happened to the days when you had to make sure that you passed cert and your game ran because you didn't get another chance at that first impression? Too much reliance on day zero and day one patches. It needs to change. That idea needs to be adjusted.
Worries. Yep. Off the B flag. It's around this direction. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
This
this
game was like
direction.
a mess.
Yep. I think we're going the right way.
that couldn't play when there was hype around the game and never stuck with it or opened it again due to the sour taste it left in their
I hear you,
mouths.
Caleb.
Even if the developers fixed some bugs and glitches post-release. Like taking a delicious pie out of the oven before it's done, so it's just like hot, soupy egg that might give you salmonella. There's a reason games like Red Dead 2 and GTA 5 have a dedicated fan base to this day, playing online and solo. Even if you need to pick up
GTA Online didn't work great at launch. You couldn't get in, servers were unstable, you would get booted all the time. Like GTA Online is actually not a great example of something that just worked at launch. It works now. GTA 5 the campaign worked right, but when multiplayer launched, it wasn't sunshine and rainbows.
up each can of beans one at a time. Rockstar did
This is-
something right, and it's
Yeah, Red Dead's phenomenal.
releasing a game that's done. The bar is on the ground. But first, a short commercial break with today's video sponsor, Factor. Factor is a meal delivery service with
Hey Factor, you sponsored me one time.
meals that are
what
ready in
happened?
just 2. Now back to the video. But in the wake of AAA studios losing trust and consistency in the eyes of the consumers, while still pocketing so much money anyway, so who cares, there are games that are trying something unique and fun and capture that same childlike wonder, like
Yeah, they're all the small games. And you know what? Guess what? When you allow creatives to be creative and try new stuff, you get big hits. Vampire Survivors, Microsoft. We just talked about it with the Microsoft story where Sea of Thieves, Grounded, Vampire Survivors, Balaltro or whatever, Helldivers 2. There's just like these experiences like, hey, this is really refreshing and unique and cool.
discovering you can chuck the baby penguin off the side of the map in Mario 64. And those are the rise of indie games.
Pal World. Yeah.
PlayStation Plus is a service where you pay yearly to get access to a huge library of games. Some older classics and lots of indie
Or Xbox
games.
Game
I started
Pass, of course.
exploring the vast library of really cool indie games after deciding I didn't want to play Far Cry 3 for the 5th time. Nor did I want to experience the 10 Assassin's Creed games on here. So I started with just downloading whatever I thought looked cool, and it started with this really cool looking Chrono Trigger inspired
Sea of Stars is great.
JRPG,
Sea of Stars was day one on Game Pass. Well, he's a PlayStation gamer, that's fine, but like for only $19.99. Just kidding.
Stars. Made me cry. Excellent game, and won Best Indie Game of 2023.
It's really good.
Then I discovered Tinykin, a game that outshined
Yeah,
Pikmin
I've heard good
4
things
in
about this.
every single way, in my opinion. The world is really fun to traverse, and the platforming gameplay is really well paced and extremely fun. It's not as sluggish as Pikmin 4. Moonlighter is a really cool game where you manage a shop by day and go battle dungeons for materials to sell by night. And of course,
Yeah, just real quick aside here again, I don't mean to keep interrupting her, but I think we're seeing this newfound love for indie games because it's become very apparent to the people that are playing these games that AAA, they care to a point, but at some point they need to make their money. And indie games, they feel like they're doing it for the love of the craft. And I think people are really wising up to that idea. AAA has been sort of messy for a few years now, and every once in a while we get a great AAA game. Like God of War Ragnarok was an amazing game. Elder Scrolls is amazing. All the Zeldas were great. But we have these problematic launches, and it's just like, how is this happening time and time and time again? I think we're going to see a big shift in terms of what is being created and the level of polish that we get over the next few years, because they've kind of got their hands caught in the cookie jar, so to speak. And people are just like, yeah, here's what's going to happen. We're not going to buy your game. We're not going to play it anymore. We're not going to support it. We're out. And that's what's going to happen.
Of course, those dungeons get harder and the materials get more expensive. And in the same vein, I was introduced to an older game, Enter the Gungeon, a bullet hell
That's a good one.
roguelike that is
I
extremely
played that
fun, replayable, and has a
Just a
pretty
little bit,
solid
but-
couch co-op. And guess what? You can buy all 4 of these games at full price for 1.5 AAA games. And indie games, especially on Steam, go on sale constantly. While writing this, almost all these games are on sale. And yet, Skyrim is still $60 on every platform for over a decade. Back in my day, AAA games used to go on sale for $40 after a year. And it's not like these games are much shorter to justify the cheaper cost by any means. The hours at least I put into them are pretty similar to what I put into AAA titles as well.
Sea of Stars. I didn't play a ton of Sea of Stars, for full disclosure. It has no right to be as good as it is. It's like AAA quality. It's fantastic. I can't believe that game is like part of ID at Xbox, part of what it is. Yeah, here I'll link to the video at the end here once I finish watching.
Well, of course, there are stinkers and masterpieces that live in both indie and AAA worlds, but people are certainly noticing a trend that these giant studios not putting out finished games does not cater well to the price point, and, well, the fact that they're not indie studios. Hey, don't you have hundreds of employees working on this, and it still doesn't...
Yeah, you don't really get a pass if you work in AAA. You're charging premium prices. You should be getting a premium product. You don't get a pass. I know making games are hard, but it's just like you're asking me to spend $70 to $120. Like Star Wars Outlaws, what's the price? It's $120 right now. Okay. You think people are just going to give you the pass for like the graphic quality that's in that game, or like weird gameplay elements and things like that? Like, I like Julian Garrity's games of the past, and I like Ubisoft games. I'm going to play Star Wars Outlaws. I'm going to play Assassin's Creed. But like, you think the general audience is just like going to say, yeah, sure, what is $120? Money is tight for everyone right now. This stuff is important to people. Like, you're not some small studio. You're one of the big studios.
Meet the bare minimum expectations. The fact that many big game studios have garnered a terrible workplace reputation, not limited to overworking, unpaid...
Oh yeah, and then to top it all off, the big AAA publisher is making the people in the trenches put out the worst sorry statements, so they just get absolutely dunked on. And that's after months of being crunched and like squished into like these timetables that the executives have made up so that they can, get their microtransaction profit margin out it's so problematic. And like, I've actually been really happy about all the unionization that I've seen. I've always been fairly indifferent about unions. Like, I do not see another recourse for a lot of these AAA companies to do anymore. Like, the employees are fed up and they're like, look, you've treated us like garbage for like 2 decades. We're just going to unionize, because what other options do we have? You had your chance to treat us right. You didn't. Time to unionize, everybody.
Overtime and sexual harassment. That could be an entirely new video. I'm mainly going after the suits, single-handedly ruining the modern state of gaming by the
I think we can think of a few more to add to our list.
The power of pure greed. I'm aware there are more than passionate devs on these teams that want to see the hard work they've done be something they're proud of. I also want to clarify, I'm not talking about games with a few bugs here and there, too. No one expects a game with 0 bugs and releases absolutely perfect. The ones I'm talking about are the ones clearly unfinished and rushed, and which bugs make the game unenjoyable or entirely unplayable. There's a reason the guy that made Roller Coaster Tycoon by himself is regarded as a god among indie developers. He made this game in an archaic programming language even for the time it was released.
Wait, what language is that? That looks like Pascal? Is that Pascal? All right, sorry. Real quick, I'm a programming nerd. Was Roller Coaster Tycoon made in Pascal? What? Just C? It was written in assembly. Holy. And then C? So C or assembly? Sorry. No, Pascal is like what they code cash registers with.
In 1999. Roller Coaster Tycoon has an impressive feat of almost not having any bugs in the game, and during a time where you needed much support of a team to create and release a game. During this time, making a game by yourself or even with a small team was not super accessible. AAA studios dominated the landscape and said, here, this is what we got for you, and that's it. These are your only options here. And back then, the expectation was that it was done. Because after release, they couldn't rely on post-release patches and updates through the internet like they...
Yeah, and you know what? I talked about it at the beginning, and Laura Fryer, who I did the reaction to, she pointed to this. She used to work at Xbox. She talked about the 360 era. She talked about Gears of War and getting that off the ground. She's been a major influence in the games industry. She talked about this reliance on day zero and day one and how it's resulting in worse products. The whole purpose of having the ability to do this was to make games better, not make it a crutch so that you can release unfinished things and then patch it. Like, so I'm glad she brought this up in her video too, because I have talked about this on the channel and how it's problematic.
They do today. When there were patches, they mostly used to physically ship out newer copies of the game. And this has affected things like speedrunning and tournament gameplay and games like Wii Sports and Melee, where different versions of the game matter. In Wii Sports, one version of Wii Baseball doesn't have this cutscene at the start of the game, and the other version does. In speedrunning, changes like this can be crucial to saving time. Yes, the PS2 and that generation of consoles had internet connectivity, but developers couldn't rely on everyone having decent internet and the physical adapter needed, and it wasn't a super reliable way to install updates to fix bugs. Unlike now,
Again, snubbing the Xbox content. She's clearly a PlayStation gamer. That's fine. But she's making the point that I made earlier in the video. It's become a crutch. And are we glad they're there? Yeah, sure. But remember when games came out and they had to work? Like, now they don't even need to work. That's insane.
now where a significant portion of gamers have internet because the landscape has shifted from purchasing physical copies of a game to downloading it on your computer. And if your computer can't handle the 90 gigabyte Fortnite file, then fuck you. You don't deserve to
Language.
play. Yet another reason to cherish physical copies of media. I'm rewatching Inuyasha for the 5th time, and the season 6 intro song is once again removed from Hulu, and it upsets me dearly. If I had the physical copy of this, it could have been preserved. But now I just have to like play it side by side on YouTube every time I watch an episode. Like, if Nintendo could have patched games in the Nintendo 64 era, they would have destroyed Mario 64 glitches. And it would have been even more difficult to get your hands on a version of the game where you could perform things like the backwards long jump.
Yeah.
But then, everything changed when the internet attacked. I'm the face, not Pikachu. Hello? Yes! As the internet became more accessible, reliable, and better in every household, unless you have Spectrum, of course, game development also became
I actually don't think that Nintendo has really changed their strategy with patches too much. Like, I think the Zeldas... Oh, no, they patched out the sword glitch and stuff like that. So, like, if you have the base version of Zelda, I duplicated the Master Sword. So, like, I never want to update that because if I do, it'll mess everything up. But there are ways to still get those base versions. She does make a good point, though. So, yeah.
became more accessible and feasible for indie devs. You don't need the internet to code, obviously, but now you could work with a team easier online, share code, game assets, engines, tools, and the internet really allowed for community-driven indie development. In the early 2010s, we saw Minecraft and Terraria become increasingly popular. In 2015, we got Undertale and this song. In 2016, we saw also the pinnacle of indie gaming and the face of video game music playlists on YouTube, Stardew Valley, also famously made by a guy. It's undeniable how massive these indie games got, and how massive of a community these games still have. And I feel
Yeah, what was the other game on Xbox? The Fox game. You know the one I'm talking about. Good game.
like that was really the start of this change of tide for gaming as a whole. The
like
way
Zelda.
we consume games is so different than 20 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. And while I'm disappointed at a lot of the changes, I'm really happy and excited to see the good changes. Like this game called Minami Lane was made by a couple in 6 months, and it's awesome, and
Dungeons
I love
and
it, and I
Hinterberg.
highly recommend
Tunic,
this
thank
one
you.
for cozy gamers. I feel like I have access to so many different types of games than I
Silk
ever
Song.
did. At my fingertips,
Hollow
with low
Knight.
risk and low commitment pricing. I'd say 2020 saw a huge shift in gaming. With large studios putting production on hold, that left a gap for some heater multiplayer indie titles to
Yeah, now they're laying a ton of people off. I think we are going to see this huge swell of indie game studio come up out of nowhere because, yeah, it's just been It's just been too long. And with Unreal and the ease of development, like I'll open Unreal after I watch this video, but I downloaded a free dragon asset and I was trying to do size comparisons for Game of Thrones. And I basically made a little game with a bunch of dragons in it. It took me like an hour. So if I can make some pile of garbage, imagine what somebody who actually cares about game development and learning how to do it can do by spending, you know, a couple of years in the engine. They've made some really incredible things. And I think we're going to see some really cool stuff in the next several years. Black Myth Wukong is a good example of a game where, you know, this creative team gets together, they're putting together a game in China and they're doing it in Unreal and it looks absolutely phenomenal. I think it's cool.
Drop onto the scene like Among Us. Honestly, I feel like the Among Us craze forever changed how and what games content creators stream and play, and thus propel the popularity of. I'm probably biased because I am a content creator, but the ecosystem of indie gaming has changed so much, even with the landscape of streaming and content creators.
I've thought about it.
I know
Marble.
Minecraft
I just don't
isn't
have
an
time.
indie game anymore, but think about how much it propelled in popularity during the Minecraft YouTuber era.
Yeah.
And now a lot of these creators are being outed as sexual assaulters. Moving on. Phasmophobia saw this, Lethal Company, Party Animals, and now this new game, Content Warning, all focused on really fun multiplayer
Content
gameplay
Warning, yeah.
for a really affordable price. If not free. The price and eyeballs make these games that much more accessible to people of all ages. The goal? Get as many people to download this game as possible. Content Warning was free for the first 24 hours it was on Steam, and it saw 6 million downloads during this time. And after that, it's only $8. I don't want to harp on pricing too much because I don't think it's a giant factor in all this. You know, it does boil down to like corporate greed, but like it is a factor when you consider how indie devs don't necessarily have the same resources that big studios have in terms of marketing and reach. I mean, Content Warning is a game where you literally are a YouTuber, and the goal is to film spooky stuff and go viral. This game was made for people to play on stream and make content around, and it's so much fun, on or offline. This is so painful.
Make us the hell we
I
deserve.
don't think they even know where it is. No? Okay, which way? Camera, where? This way?
Speaking of the massive online community indie games have, we have
Fez,
creators
yeah.
like Game Maker's Toolkit, who first of all makes really cool informational videos about game design, and Dunkey, who host community game jams, where people make and submit a game in just 48 hours based on the set theme. In 2020,
Yeah, you know, there's like, there's the game jam scene. There's tons of tutorials that you can find online. Somebody in chat mentioned Kingdom Bridge of Spirits, only 12 developers. I'm so happy to see this because there are people out there that really care about making cool stuff. And it's really heartening to see, honestly. And it unties itself from the messy corporation structures that a lot of the devs who we've grown up, you know, knowing and being fans of are caught up in now, where they're like, oh, well, we have to have microtransactions in our games because that's how the industry does it. And I push back against that. I think that is the solution, the only solution that they have managed to come up with. But does that truly mean they're necessary? Maybe you could not spend as much on your marketing. Marketing takes up literally half the budget of a lot of games, if not more. Like it's just insane to me. So I think there are other solutions, and I don't buy some executive telling me that microtransactions need to be in the game. I just don't.
2023, Game Maker's Toolkit's Game Jam saw over 20,000 entries.
Yeah, and like what type of game are they trying to copy? They're trying to copy Vampire Survivors. It's like...
Of course, these are not all full games, but all really cool ideas, which are truly impressive to see done and thought out so quickly and cleverly. Rollerdrome is a game that was first conceived at GMTK's first Game Jam, and in 2022 was released as a fully fledged, award-winning 3D arcade shooter.
I'm pretty sure the studio shut down, unfortunately.
This gets a cool out of 10 from me. By the way, don't forget to subscribe so we can hit 1 million subscribers. My mom told me to remind people throughout my video.
Don't quote me on the Roller Dome thing, but I remember something about that not being great.
So here I am. You're welcome, Mom. Bouncing off of that, Steam and PlayStation Plus changed how we buy games. With the ongoing sales, releasing games in beta for basically free playtesting, games are just more accessible now than they ever used to be for everyone involved. And our library of games has ever expanded. And yet I'm still playing the same fucking game from 2001. And yes,
That's a problem. That is one problem with the AAA market. I do think we're at a saturation point. Does everybody still want to play another Assassin's Creed? So like, I think it's a little bit, there's a little bit of a problem there. There are other games competing in that genre. There's other games that are doing things better. So like, yeah, I don't know.
Actively dislike Ubisoft's greed, but am subscribed to PSN or PS Plus for the sole reason that PS Plus is not only much cheaper, but offers a much wider selection
And I'll say it again, and Game Pass.
of games from a variety of publishers. Ubisoft's does not and is $18 a month. So many of us have played such a variety of games that maybe at least my expectation when I've played so many great indie games that just work upon release versus big titles that are just broken or empty just feels extra disappointing. On top of remembering the ingenuity that went into a really cool gaming experience when everyone was just figuring this whole gaming thing out. Boo, wah, back in my day, gaming used to be good, now everything is shit. Wah, 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 you little baby, wah, you little baby, huh? That's not entirely true, and that's not what I'm trying to say. Gaming in general is like objectively better now as a whole. Have you
That's
actually
true.
tried to go back and play some of those games on the original console? The cameras are jarring and make it borderline unplayable. And I know
all
that's going to
true.
be a controversial thing to say, but maybe I'm just used to the camera controls that we figured out for this century. And yes, I love these games from the bottom of my heart. I promise you that. My other friend is also playing Kingdom Hearts from the beginning and just wow.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
Uh-oh. Oh my
it's hard.
gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh, but if you don't do anything, you just don't. It doesn't matter.
I mean, this is quality gameplay right here. Just take your nostalgia goggles off for a moment. It's not as black and white as just like, oh, older games were better. I'm gonna get so much shit for saying that. I'm not sorry to the Kingdom Hearts fans out there. That shit is raw. So like many things in this world, it's a spooky gray area with nuance. You can argue that gaming is both better and worse than before. And I really just wanted to kind of write like this love letter to all the cool indie games I've found in the past couple years and recognize the impact they've made on my life.
I just wanted her video, like it started with a point about how greed has ruined gaming, and it sort of ended talking about how indie games are great. I don't really get the through line. I think the conclusion's a little weak, but the rest of her video I totally get. Maybe she's about to wrap it up, but I'm a little bit lost about the point that she's making at the moment.
Internet landscape and how the good ones are so full of passion and fun and aim to do what they do really well instead of
Yeah.
going for a vast open world I want to be everything type of game that ends up just being kind of mid.
Okay, I should have let her talk for 2 more seconds. The point that she's trying to make is basically that there's too much of a focus on being everything to everyone instead of just being the good game. And like, that's my interpretation of what she's saying. I actually agree with that. I think they're trying to tick too many boxes in the AAA space. And it's just like, God, there was somebody who did a speech about this basically where they said something along the lines of, you need to know what you're making. I don't care if you have Twitch integration and all these bells and whistles and all of the check marks. What is the game you're making? That's the first thing that you should be considering, not what cool, like, do you use AI as an example in your development process? Who cares? What do you want to make? That's the core of what should be being asked. And she hits the nail on the head.
I hope this encourages you to go check out some of the indie games that I recommended. Please, someone else play these games, and if you have, please comment below. I really want to hear your experiences with them. Like I say when I'm procrastinating doing literally anything important by gaming, born to game, forced to work.
I've never seen this content before. I have no idea who Gabrielle is. So I've never heard of Gabrielle, but that was kind of a cool video. Gabi Belle. She has 1 million subs. I don't know how I've never heard of that person. But anyway, here's a link to the video. Really, really good stuff, and absolutely understand where she's coming from. I'm going to subscribe. Like, yeah, definitely subscribe to that channel. I haven't heard of Gabi Belle, but I really like that video. That was cool. It looks like she covers a variety of stuff. Like she reviewed Gordon Ramsay's masterclass. I don't know if she usually talks about gaming, but that one was good. Interesting stuff to think about. I think my biggest problem with the AAA space, it's not the devs. It's not the people that are in the trenches trying to make a good product. It's the whole economic system that they're set up within, because it feels like leadership only cares about the profit margins and they don't care about the product. And there's too vast of a disconnect between those two things, right? They're too far apart, and there needs to be some sort of middle ground where the business realities can meet the creative realities. And I think it's skewed way too far in one direction. Anyway, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. If you are not subscribed yet, hit that like button if you are already subscribed. Thank you so much to the members for supporting, and a big thank you to the members. If you want to become a member, you can click that join button right down there. I think I'm going to sign off for the day. I greatly appreciate y'all watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you for the next one. We took a lot of twists and turns today, but I greatly appreciate you watching. Bye for now, everybody, and I'll see you for the next one soon.